Bill Hayes. I am the chair of the Danvers Electric Municipal Light Board. As a preliminary matter, permit me to confirm that all members and persons anticipated on the agenda are present and can hear me. First, members of the Municipal Light Board. Mike Landers.
Here.
Eric Mitchell. We just shortly ago got an email that Eric has a work emergency and cannot attend. Staff, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. David Lane.
Here.
Peter Korpusik.
Here.
Angelica Medina.
Here.
Clint Allen.
Here.
Jason Small.
Here.
Stephanie Doherty.
Here.
Okay, so everybody is present and accounted for. The introduction to the remote meeting is as follows. Good morning. This open meeting of the Municipal Light Board is being conducted remotely, consistent with Governor Baker's executive order of March 12th, 2020, due to the current state of emergency in the Commonwealth due to the outbreak of the COVID-19 virus. In order to mitigate the transmission of the COVID-19 virus, we have been advised and directed by the Commonwealth to suspend public gatherings, and as such, the governor's order suspends the requirement of the open meeting law to have all meetings in a publicly accessible physical location. Further, all members of public bodies are allowed and encouraged to participate remotely. The order, which you can find posted with agenda materials for this meeting, allows public bodies to meet entirely remotely so long as reasonable public access is afforded so that the public can follow along with the deliberations of the meeting. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. This meeting will feature public comment. For this meeting, the Municipal Light Board is convening remotely via the WebEx application as posted on the town's website, identifying how the public may join. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and that some attendees are participating by video conference. Accordingly, please be aware that other folks may be able to see you and take care not to screen share your computer. Anything that you broadcast may be captured by the recording. Meeting materials. All supporting materials that have been provided to members of this body are available on the town's website unless otherwise noted. The public is encouraged to follow along using the posted agenda unless I note otherwise. Meeting business ground rules. We are now turning to the first item on the agenda, but before we do so, permit me to cover some ground rules for effective and clear conduct of our business and to ensure accurate meeting minutes. I, as chair, will introduce each speaker on the agenda. After they conclude their remarks, the chair, the instructions say go down the line of members. We have agreed that we will do this by asking the group for comments in order to move the meeting along and save everybody time. After they conclude the remarks, the chair will ask the group for comments, questions, or motions. Please remember to mute your phone or computer when you are not speaking. Please remember to speak clearly and in a way that helps generate accurate minutes. For any response, please wait until the chair yields the floor to you and state your name before speaking. If members wish to engage in colloquy, that word gets me every month, with other members, please do so through the chair, taking care to identify yourself. For items with public comment, we have established an email address for public comment. It is publiccomments@danverselectric.org. This email address is also posted with the agenda and shown online with the streaming of this meeting. Residents will email comments and they will be provided read out loud after staff has confirmed their name and address. Finally, each vote taken in this meeting will be conducted by roll call. Okay, so we would now move to the first item on the agenda. Instead, I'd like to take just a moment for a brief opening remark from the chair. Our newest member of the board, who has not been on that long and is already contributing, had a great suggestion a couple of months ago, and that is he suggested that the purpose of each item at the board meeting be identified with the document so that it is clear. I'm going to present my opinion of the purpose of the open meeting. It is to provide transparency and accountability of public business and to inform and educate the public about how their business is being done by the people they have elected or who have been hired by the people they elected. The purpose of the Danvers Electric Municipal Light Board, which is 3 volunteers, is to provide oversight and to challenge the leaders of the business with questions and suggestions. This provides a different perspective based upon the backgrounds of the board members, which are a legal background, a nonprofit executive background, and a large company engineering and operations background. This, I believe, provides a strong oversight function to the leaders of the business and should be in the public interest. So as we move forward in the meeting, I would ask each of the business leaders when they're speaking to remember that members of the public are viewing and we are here to do their business, to educate and inform them. So thank you. Now we will move to the second item on the agenda, which is to receive public comments. Clint Allen, have we received any public comments prior to the meeting?
Good morning, Bill. No public comments at this time.
Okay, thank you, Clint. Next, we move to the third item on the agenda to accept the minutes from the meeting. Do I hear such a motion from the board?
I move that we accept the motion minutes from the last meeting.
I second that motion. Is there any discussion from anybody in the meeting on the motion on the floor? Hearing none, we will move to a roll call vote on the motion to accept the minutes as submitted from the December 22nd meeting. This is a roll call vote. Mike Landers?
Aye.
Eric Mitchell, absent. Bill Hayes, aye. The motion is passed unanimously to accept the minutes as submitted. We now move to the fourth item on the agenda, the November of 2020 financial report by Peter Korpusik. Peter, you have the floor.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Peter Korpusik here, DPW Business Manager, and today we're going to review the financial statements of the Electric Division through 11/30/2020, and this will give us some perspective of where the business stands through that time frame. If we start on page 1 of the financial statements, we're going to look at the revenues through November 30th. And the revenues are up in total. This is revenues, which means sales from electricity, sales that we've generated through the selling of electricity. And we're up 3% through the year at November 30th. The highlight that I've been showing, and I will highlight again today, is the domestic sales, which are up 11% over last year. In part, we've been attributing that to more people working from home, and during this past warm season, summer season, it was warmer than usual, and we had higher sales due to air conditioning needs. And that's true. That still is what's been keeping the revenue stream higher. I did want to note that the sales registered for the month of November, though, are in fact down 2% from where they were last year at this time. So again, that's just to further reinforce in my mind and to the customers that it was through the sale of air conditioning units of electricity that why we're higher, and in addition to people being at home. So the sales have held up through the pandemic. If we go to the middle part of the page, I've pointed out, and I'll point out today, that our interest income is down by over $250,000. As I've noted in the past, because of the pandemic, the Federal Reserve has in fact lowered interest rates where the treasurer keeps our money in MMDT accounts. They are quick to, those type of accounts are quick to pick up changes in the interest rate set by the Federal Reserve. So that's why we're down $250,000. In general, if we go to the grand total revenue, we can see that we're down 3% in total from where we were last year at this particular time. Now, I would say that another thing that we noted is, if we go back to the middle of the page, is miscellaneous non-operating income, account number 421. In the past, we've had funds from the RM project where we had to have money available there in case there was work to be done. And last year, as we noted, that's the last payment we anticipate getting from them, and that is down considerably from where it was last year, over $1.5 million. If we go to the bottom of the page, we'll review our expenses through this time frame. As I noted earlier, we're here to sell electricity, and we buy power and resell it to our customers. Our expenses for that part of the business are down 7.5% from where they were last year, almost $1.5 million. And as I've noted for the past couple of months, it's an interesting thing that although our power costs are down, which is the 555 account, 556, and 557, those are down 11.8%. If we go to the next couple lines down, transmission by others, account number 565, that's up $400,000 or 9%. So although our power costs are down, the cost for the electricity to get here to Danvers has increased. So it's a mixed bag there with the power costs. Some are up and some are down. Our other expenses, there isn't anything really that to me jumps off the page. I mean, I guess one thing I haven't mentioned is if we go to the bottom of page 2, account 428, amortization of debt, discount, and expenses, we see minus $300,000 there. The treasurer has refinanced some of our general obligation bonds to take advantage of the lower interest rates, and that resulted in us having a reduction of our expenses by $300,000. So if we look at the bottom number on page 2, we are profitable at this time, which is key. We are profitable. Our expenses are down. Certain things haven't been able to be done that Clint and Jason would probably do, but because of the restrictions that have been put on us due to COVID and having manpower available during emergencies, things haven't been done that would normally be done. The next thing, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to explain is if we go to page 4, which is our balance sheet, concerns are by us that it's one thing to have income, it's another thing to have to be liquid or have the ability to pay our bills. If we go to page 4, and we have 2 cash accounts here, 2 of the main cash accounts of the division, other special funds and our maintenance cash. between those two accounts, the division has $18.6 million. So we're profitable, which is what we saw on the previous page. We're liquid so that if something were to happen, we have the ability to meet what we think would be any and all type of emergencies, and the ability to pay for our power that we need to buy on the open market. If we go to the next page, Mr. Chairman, we also have another cash account here, which is depreciation fund. This is the fund that the division uses to pay for its capital projects, or the replacements of the major infrastructure that we have that delivers the electricity through the town and to the customer. And that is up by, $369,000. So between all of those three major cash accounts that the division uses to pay for its capital projects, purchase its power, and pay for its general expenses during the year, we have $21.7 million. At the top of page 4, Mr. Chairman, it's one thing for any business to sell its product, and in our case, it's electricity. It's another thing to collect the money. And if we look at our accounts receivable, the second line down, account number 142, we stand at a 1% decrease from where we were last year. So the news here, our take on this is, yes, we're selling more electricity to our main segment of customers, which is our residents. And yes, we certainly, we are collecting the money. We certainly don't want to overstate, though, that there probably are people that are facing hardships during this. But in general, our customer base has bought more electricity from us, and they have been paying for it. So that's a good thing. And Mr. Chairman, that is where we stand. We're profitable, we're liquid, and I right now don't see any troubles in the horizon.
Okay, thank you, Peter. Excellent report. Now we'll ask the board members if they have any questions or comments for Peter. But do you have any questions or comments for Peter?
Nope, great job as usual. There's nothing better during our monthly meeting to hear Peter say that we are profitable and liquid. Those are the two terms that I want to hear every single month, and he did it again, so we're in good shape.
Thank you, Mike. Peter, I have just a couple of questions on page 2. I think these are things I've asked almost every month, only because they show a high variance from last year. And it isn't that we don't necessarily understand them, it's just I think they should be highlighted for anybody who is looking on the TV. On page 2, near the top, item number 586, meter expense, 330% of last year. Just a brief comment on that, please.
Well, because of COVID, we've had the people, the meter techs on A/B schedules, and we haven't really been doing any meter maintenance except for those meters that may fail, which we would constitute an emergency. Things that we would normally do have been deferred until interacting on a general basis with the public is less risky to having our workforce get COVID.
Okay, thank you, Peter. Next item is account number 0590, maintenance of supervision and engineering.
Mr. Chairman, rather than discuss 590 by itself, I believe if we look at account 581 at the top, labor expense, 590, which is maintenance, supervision, and engineering. We also have 902, meter monitoring, which is our AMI techs, and 920. All of those together, all of those are down, and we, during the COVID issue, we're using a different code so that we could track when people were home and stuff, and how we were handling the COVID when people were here versus their normal roles. And that, by doing that, it allowed us to have a better ability to answer certain questions. Now, what it has also done here is that it's kind of stilted or made it look like there's an issue. It's just those particular buckets that or line items that I've mentioned. It's been taken from those and put into another one. So it's just really a different way of looking at our labor costs due to the pandemic.
Okay, Peter, thank you. And then there's one other that kind of jumps out as well, and if I recall from prior months, it's a similar explanation. Account number 930.
930.
General expense.
Yes, I believe, and that, Mr. Chairman, is where the admin costs that we've been coding, that's where it ends up, which, no one likes to see. In general, no one likes to see an account called miscellaneous general expenses, even though we have miscellaneous general expenses. No one certainly likes to see that amount of money, but that's in fact where those dollars have ended up. So that's why that's so high.
Okay, thank you. Again, I think it's reported almost every month, but it has run high all year, so I just like to note it. I'm totally with Mike. Another excellent report. The words we like to hear: liquid and profitable, as any business wants to hear. That takes care of comments from the board. I'll ask as a group, are there any comments or questions for Peter from the leaders of the business on the call? Hearing none, seeing none, we will, do I hear a motion to accept the November financial report?
I move that we accept the November financial report.
Thank you, Mike. I will second that. And we will now, any further discussion from anyone on the call? Hearing none, we'll move to a roll call vote. Mike Landers?
Aye.
Bill Hayes? Aye. Motion passes unanimously. We'll now move to the next item on the agenda, the PP and FA report for February.
Thank you, Bill. Good morning, everybody. So this morning we'll go over the recommendation for the February 2021 purchase power and fuel adjustment charge. We'll start with talking about the power supply cost factors that impacted the decision. As Peter just went over, we're closed out through November of 2020. And as has been the case pretty much, had been the case all through 2020, the power supply budget has come consistently below what we had forecasted. September, October, November were no exceptions. In November, we saw reduced transmission and capacity costs. And then in addition to that, we received a $186,000 rec payment for the Saddleback, Brown Bear, and Canton Wind projects. So we came in almost $300,000 below budget just for November. And as of December 1st, 2020, our actual costs are 11.14% below what we had budgeted, and that's comes in about $2.5 million. Next, I'd like to discuss the kilowatt hour sales factors. Essentially, except for that really hot month of August back in 2020, which is really hard to imagine right now, we sales were consistently below what we had forecasted throughout the year as well, as a whole, from a kilowatt hour sales standpoint. Again, November was no exception, and up through December 1st, we are, almost 5% below what we had forecasted for our bulk sales system-wide. And then lastly, of course, the bulk sales of kilowatt hours impacts our power supply revenue. Again, with the exception of, July was actually that month we almost came in spot on. But August we saw, an overshot from what we had budgeted for. But besides that, revenue has come in on the power supply side below what we had budgeted for through 2020. So through December 1st, we are basically about 5% below what we had anticipated, which translates to roughly $1.17 million below what we had budgeted for. So with that said, next March, we'll have 2020 should be closed out, so we'll know exactly where we land. But as of December 1st, it looks like the PP and FA under collection fund is sitting at a positive 2.6 million. So actually inched up a little bit from December's meeting where we anticipated we were going to land. maintaining the rate that we had set for this month at the last meeting. That projects that the over-under fund will land at approximately 820,000 end of year 2021, which will in fact return approximately 1.8 million of over-collected power supply revenue. So therefore, the recommendation was to hold the charge steady from January, being residential at 5.28 cents per kilowatt hour, and all of the rate classes 5.52 cents per kilowatt hour. Additionally, if we want to go to the third page, you can kind of see the visuals on this. So our top graph is almost closed out, like I mentioned, for 2020. It shows where we're anticipating landing at the end of the year, and then basically just carries over to the 2020 budget and forecast. So with holding the rate steady, that kind of shows how we intend on, returning that over collection that we've experienced the last couple of years. If we go to the last page, you just find the top of this one, the purchase power and fuel adjustment. This is the going back to 2013, the historical charge. You can see, from the 2020 rate was up, and still below that historical average. Now we've come even farther away from that historical average for January 21. And then finally, if we go to the February 21, 750 kilowatt hour, which is like an average residential bill, you'll see Danvers is still on the bottom, towards the bottom 25% of the graph, well in line with our neighbors, and certainly well below some of the IOUs, if you can look up at the top of that. I feel for those folks. Yeah, I'd be happy to take any questions at this point.
Thank you, Clint. Another excellent report. Mike, do you have any questions or comments for Clint?
No, just as often happens, I was doing a closing with somebody who was from Winthrop, who I can't remember if they were National Grid or which one they were with, but we obviously in the real estate business, utility rates will come up, and I'll tell them what I do and where I'm at, and almost consistently in this case, they want to know if there's the possibility of us selling them electricity somehow just to their house. Is there a way to get out of from under National Grid and let Danvers Electric sell them power and Winthrop at whatever address they're at? So good job, and I think as long as we retain this sort of consistent outlook in regards to our rates, I don't believe anybody's going to be in any position to complain about it. So thank you.
Thank you, Mike. I have just a few kind of questions, mostly driven by trying to make sure that people who are watching understand. So going back to page 1 on the power supply cost factors, we compare the power supply budget versus the actual. And the question I have is, how often is that budget updated? Is that the town budget we submit at the beginning or in May of the year?
That's correct, Bill. Yeah, unless in April of last year, we had adjusted it because of the COVID impact. We got an updated forecast, but in a typical year, that would just be the annual budget that's set at the beginning of the calendar year. Okay,
thank you, Clint. And then basically the same thing. Oh, and that is not updated. That's a budget that's set April last year. And then the same question basically for the kilowatt hour sales factors, which is a comparison of forecast. How often is the forecast updated and where do we get it from?
So the forecast is produced annually. We work with Energy New England as well as in-house engineering, and then our efficiency coordinator to put together a 3, 5, and a 10-year forecast.
Okay. So that's again an annual forecast.
Correct.
That would explain why this year, at least, we're so consistently under the forecast because of such a different year. Okay. Moving on to page 2. Again, a similar question, the power supply revenue budget. And that's our town budget, so that's done once a year. Is that correct?
Correct, Bill. Yep.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to the next page, the graphs of power supply costs and revenues, power supply budget. The first one is this year, 2020, and to me is really quite enlightening, where it shows we're winding up $2.5 million over collection at the end of the year. And then looking down at 2021, we start with the gray line way up there at 2.5 million, and we see how the business over the course of the year is returning the vast majority of that back to the ratepayers. That to me is a particularly powerful graph. Went through the website yesterday. I think that's the kind of thing that ought to be on the website, and maybe, you know, nicely annotated so people can see it, because it really tells a powerful story that, you know, we've had an unusual, very unusual year. Our business has been healthy, and then that wound up over collecting revenue, and then we see how that revenue is being returned back to the ratepayers, which is a comment we used to hear every month in the meetings when they were in person. And it's good to see and have a graphic to see that we're doing that. Okay, moving on to the next page. Again, both of these graphs are very powerful, showing where they've been over the years from all the way back in 13, and how they've pretty consistently been going down. And even with what we've seen this year, where we've had to raise the rates to deal with the realities of our business and the environment we're in, shows we're still below the historical average of all those years. And I think that's a real tribute to the leadership of the business there. And again, the bottom graph, always powerful to see us down near the bottom and much lower than the investor-owned utilities. So a really powerful package, in my opinion, and another great report. So those complete the comments from the board members. Are there any questions or comments from the business leaders on the call for Clint on this subject? Hearing none, do I hear a motion to accept the PP and FA recommendation as submitted by Clint?
So moved.
I will second that motion. Any further discussion on the motion from anybody on the call? Hearing none, we move to a roll call vote. Mike Landers?
Aye.
Bill Hayes? Aye. The motion passes unanimously, and that closes item number 5 on the agenda. We will now move to item number 6, customer charge rate tariffs. I'm assuming that's from you, Clint?
So, Bill, that will be from Clint. We just wanted to make one last comment about the purchase, power, and fuel.
Sure.
Clint and his staff have updated the policy on how the board sets the PPNFA, and we haven't updated that policy based on discussions over the last couple months. And this is the policy we set when we really wanted to try to adjust the PPNFA twice a year. We call it the biannual adjustment of it. And that was the policy. This new policy will be sent out to the board in the next couple of weeks, and then we'll put this on the agenda for adoption or consideration at the next meeting. I just want to let you know that Clint had done that, and it's coming.
Thank you, David. Okay, with that, we'll close that agenda item and move on to item number 6, customer charge rate tariffs with Clint Allen.
Okay. Thank you, Bill. Thanks, Dave, for reminding me about the policy. That was good. Okay, so as we discussed at this December meeting, we'd introduced the concept of customer charge for the residential class, and then we took a hard look through the cost of service study at if our existing customer charge on the commercial class is where we're covering the administrative costs of administering those accounts. We came to the board came to the decision and approved the budget for 2021, which was to implement essentially it was a 32% of what was recommended in the cost of service study, which as if you want to turn to the memo. So for R1, that was a $7.50 per month fixed rate. So this is just the updated tariff now, how it's structured. So you can see you have the $7.50 monthly billing period charge. The energy charge remains the same with the embedded power supply and embedded O&M. And then we still have the prompt pay discount. And as we just saw in the PPNFA graph, the average monthly bill now for 750 kilowatt will, $110.55. Similarly for the G1 and G2 classes, so G1, we increased the charge to $11.07 per monthly billing period. You can see, everything else basically remained the same. One thing of note that we kind of discussed at the December meeting, the average monthly bill actually went down like about $1 for this particular case, because although the fixed rate went up, the kilowatt hour sales with the PPNFA reduction actually kind of covered that increase and then some a little bit.
Clint, could I interrupt just a sec? Could you make a similar
Sure.
comparison for the residential rate?
So I don't have the chart, but from the December meeting, it'd be a similar case. So the higher use customers, those that use more than, I think the break even was right around 1,300 kilowatt hours, if I remember correctly, or 1,500, was essentially be at break even with that reduction in energy cost versus the implementation of the fixed cost. And then that uses, more than that would actually see reduction in their average bill.
Thank you, Clint.
Sure.
So just to add one thing on the rate tariffs, we do have to file those with the DPU. Stephanie will be contacting the board members to try to get you guys to stop in and get your signatures on the rate tariffs. Both myself and Steve Barth have already signed them, and either Stephanie has those originals or they're on their way to her. Looks like she's nodding like she has them. So she'll be in contact with you guys to see if you guys can stop by and do some signatures.
Okay. Thanks, David. Clint.
Yeah, so then just to wrap up, so the G2 is similar. The basic monthly charge went up to $40.99. All other charges remained the same. You can see their average monthly bill actually went down, it was about $17, something like that. And then for the MG1 and MG2, the last two rates that we were changing the customer charge on, they just essentially mirror the G1 and G2. For MG1, it's $11.07 per monthly billing period now, and then for the MG2, it goes to the $40.99, and then you can see the impact of the bills there. And then, as David just mentioned, this is just a summary of all the rates, but those are the 5 that we will be needing to file tariffs with. And Jeff Ely worked very diligently in putting those together. And Steph will be reaching out. We can finish up the signatures and get those on file, effective January 1 of 2021.
Okay, Clint, David, do we need a board vote on that? No. Okay. Thank you, Clint. Another good report. Now we'll open it to board questions and comments. Mike, do you have any questions or comments for Clint?
No, very, very good report. Thank you, Clint, again.
Okay, thank you, Mike. Clint, I had just one reminder, and you kind of did it, and then with a little help from David got filled in. What was the purpose of this document? And that is, it is to be filed with the DPU because we made rate changes.
Yes.
My only question or comment, and just a reminder to folks as you present, if you could preface with the purpose of why we're reviewing what we're reviewing, so people who are looking can understand. So since a vote is not required, that completes board comments. I'll open it to any questions or comments from business leaders on the call. Hearing or seeing none, we will close that agenda item. Move on to item number 7. The utility director will provide an update to the board on various items of interest. David Lane?
Thank you, Bill. First, I wanted to defer to Jason Small. He's going to give us a quick engineering review of our projects, and just let you know that Jason and Clint are working on going towards Microsoft Project, so we can get back into a project management dashboard format. But Jason's going to give us a quick update, I believe, on our key projects.
Oh, great. Thank you. Jason, you have the floor.
Hey, thank you. Just to give an update on where we stand, we have been able to complete several projects over the last month or so. So just to give an update on the Danvers substation, that project is pretty much complete. The substation and the getaways are energized. We just have one section of cable from the switchgear to a riser pole left to cut over, and that's being scheduled probably for the next couple of weeks, and then I'll be done. Ferncroft substation, all our work out there is complete. The only thing we have left is to remove the old substation structure from inside the fence, but that is done. On the Northland substation project, we have regained discussions with the property owner regarding the easement and any other restoration agreements, and that is in progress and moving forward. As most of you know, there's a new school going in, a new Smith School. We had to do a 23 kV line extension to provide service to that new school. That line extension and then the underground cable to their new transformer is all complete. It's waiting on them to energize the service. So we're ahead of schedule there. And the only other work remaining out there is we have to finish transferring the 4 kV and secondary, the new poles that were set, and that should be done in the next couple of weeks. The pole 13 on Preston Street emergency replacement that I talked about a couple months ago, where there was 6 or 7 poles replaced. Most of those poles have been transferred. We only have 1 or 2 left, and they are currently working on that. That should be done in the next week or 2 as well. And then Water Street, I don't know if this has been discussed in the past, but there was a reconductoring and a load relief project for there, where there's all poles were set by Verizon. All the new conductors are in. So we're going to begin starting to cut over from the old to the new in the next couple of weeks, and that should take a few months to complete, as there's a lot of outages to be scheduled with customers. And then as far as the standards, we're still working on implementation. We're still expecting to roll that out in the next month or so. And OMS, we're still working between the new SCADA, which is up and running for that upgrade. The integration with that, so that's still being worked out. We're still expecting to go live for customer-facing map sometime in Q1 of this year. And that is all I have for our engineering projects. So even though with reduced staff, we are making progress.
Thank you, Jason. We'll now open up to board comments by roll call. Mike, do you have any questions or comments for Jason?
No, thank you very much, Jason. That's a great report. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mike. Jason, I really don't have any questions for you either. Another good report. Thank you.
Thank you.
With completion of board comments, we'll open up to any comments and questions for Jason from the leaders on the call. Do any of you have any questions or comments for Jason? Hearing or seeing none, we'll close that part of the agenda and move on back to David Lane. Update on the utility director.
Thank you, Bill. To start, I'll just kind of tag on to Jason and a couple project updates. The solar at Smith School, the engineering staff is working on the RFP on that and that will be getting out shortly on who's going to put that in and how we're going to get that put on the building. The building is supposed to, or is scheduled to get to substantial completion in June of this year. So what the project schedule is to get the project at substantial completion in June, and then begin tearing down the old school July, August, September. But we'll be able to put the solar on whenever we need to on that new building. The landfill solar project, that is still in the world of DEP approval. We're having continual meetings with the DEP. The issues at the DEP are less to do with the solar and more to do with the cap that's on the landfill. We have a cap that's on that landfill that's a little out of the ordinary, and so we're dealing with DEP and their personnel on that. We are headed to a public meeting on that, which is one of the requirements that DEP has, and we'll let the board know when we get ready to schedule a public meeting on the landfill solar. The biggest project of the year is our new DPW facility. We have that going full speed. We have consultants on board, which are working to quantify what we need and what the logistics of or specifics of a new facility would be. Those consultants have gone around and met with all the heads and various important people in the divisions to get an idea of what we have and what we need in the future. And we're also simultaneously working on the maps of possible locations. So we are getting to full speed ahead on the new DPW facility search and that study. Lastly, the projects is we have the meter replacement program. We continue to talk about that. However, it's our recommendation, and what we've done so far is just to keep it on hold with so many people at home working and at home students at home education. So we've kept that on a hold pattern right now. We have all the new meters. We'd love to get going on them, but we just feel like it's going to be too much of a burden on our customers. On our personnel updates, we have a bunch of those. The board knows we're working on a number of vacancies and promotions. First class line worker Noah Bradley was awarded the position of head line worker. This was a tough choice. We had multiple excellent candidates for the head line worker job, which we're very pleased of. And a lot of the candidates had worked up through our system. Noah Bradley came out at the top after a very competitive program as headline worker. Scott Keaton was awarded the position of lead technician under our tech services division. It was a logical progression for Scott. He's doing well and working up within our system. On the open positions, number one, we're working through the finalization of the replacement and new position of director of engineering and operations position. And it's turning out like that will be a management position on Clint's management team and not included in the professional union of the town. Second to that, we're working to fill the HSE and maintenance program manager position. We have a first class line worker position that's now open and a first class technician. And all of those have been posted, and we're doing active recruitments on all those positions.
David, before you leave that, when you said Scott was promoted, I was trying to follow along on the org chart that we have. Did Robert Brown retire? I forgot, is that?
No, below Robert Brown.
Okay. What
So-
position did he fill then? Oh, the lead technician, that's where he is on the chart now.
Correct. It's
Oh, okay, okay.
we had one technician employee that left and went to he's already a lead technician on the chart. We had one lead technician leave, and he went and started his own company.
Oh, well, good for him.
Yeah,
Good.
this guy, and yeah, we met and talked to him, and it was just he had thought about it for a long time, and this was the time for him to go try to do it, hang his own shingle out. So we wish him the best.
Yeah. All right, thank you.
Other key items, the DPU investigation is continuing. Got to give huge credit to or appreciation to Peter Kapusek and his staff for being patient and continuing to respond to questions from the DPU, which I can only preface there. It's like they're doing an audit of how we do our financials, and it's almost the questions that Peter's getting. We believe we've already answered them once. It's like they have new staff working on it, and we're answering the same questions again. All we can do is be patient and continue to provide them answers to the question, which Peter and his staff are just doing a great job on. And unfortunately, it's a lot of man hours or person hours that Peter and his staff are putting in, but it's something that we have to do. And that's going on. And then all of the stuff, we're continuing to work on the updating of the financial management software, which we would like to tag on and follow along once we get the OMS stood up. And that's all I had for today, I believe. Stephanie, did I miss anything big? Good, thank you.
Okay, thank you, David. Another good report. We'll open up the board questions. Mike Landers, do you have any questions or comments for David?
So David, two things. One is on the removal of the position from the management union. Does that need to be negotiated with the union, or is it something that just we have a unilateral ability to do?
No, it's something that the town manager worked through. He negotiated that.
Okay. And as far as the DPU investigation, materials. We basically, let me just see if I get this straight. We're in essence incurring both internal costs because of the extra time that Peter and his staff and other members of the staff have had to dedicate to dealing with that. Is that a good way to describe it?
Well, we have both internal and external costs because we do have an attorney who we have him review our material before it goes over to DPU. So we have those outside costs also.
So, we've been, and you know, the outside costs are probably, you know, obviously very easy to figure out how much we're expending from outside costs. Have we been able to at least get a fair estimate in terms of what the internal costs have been for us to pursue this?
Actually, we have a very good record of it. I don't have the number at my fingertips today. That's something we can provide to the board. In talking with the town manager, something we've tracked, part of our, you know, project tracking, we have the hours that we've spent and the salary costs of what we've spent to respond to this.
And I guess sort of through you to Peter, and I don't want to put Peter on the spot necessarily, but you might be able to answer it without doing that. Can we look at this exercise from the way it's been, you know, which we all understand and know how we got here and what the has there been anything positive from our standpoint in terms of this quote unquote audit? I mean, it seems that it would be hard for us to say that, only because we spent a significant amount of money on some outside contractors and some outside agencies to come in and to help us in that regard anyways. But has there been anything that we could look at and say, well, yeah, you know, it's been a lot of work, but in the end, there are a couple of positives out of this?
I wish I could say there was, but we haven't found it yet. Each
Okay.
year, we have our own auditors, which we hire to go through our whole system and make sure we're doing our books in accordance with you know, accounting standards, with the electric industry, the DPU. We hire professionals to check us, and we do that. And I can only say that the stuff that we come back with the DPU is they're just grasping at straws and looking for, well, this couldn't be interpreted this way or that way. It's just minute details that we can deal with. I wish it was constructive.
Is there any indication as to when there is an end date, conceivably, when we're gonna? None at all. But I mean, you know, I know we had a lengthy discussion back, seems like 100 million years ago, on a slightly different comprised board, but I do think that at some point we probably do need to have an executive session scheduled, just to discuss some of those issues that are best not dealt with, if possible, in the public forum. And I know a huge part of our job is to provide the public with the avenue and the but in this particular instance, my instinct on this is that there are issues at play here that would be best to you know, we don't want to. It is a somewhat adversarial process, and we don't want to endanger our position in that adversarial process, which is why I would recommend potentially doing something in executive session with it. I know it's not something we like to do here, but because I do think that some of the issues that were raised by our former chair, may rest in peace, in regards to these costs, are going to need to be explored on our part. And you know, we'll see where this ends up, and obviously, but if we can't, if at the end of the day, the DPU makes a determination that everything we've done has been consistent with good practices, which is my expectation that will happen, and we've expended significant costs in defending this matter, I do believe that that we have to look at that. And I'm not saying to the extreme that Stan had wanted, singling people out and increasing their bill, but I do think I do think that it needs to, you know, we need to know exactly where we're at with it, and understand how this impacts the bottom line for us. So, but that is it. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you, Mike. David, am, as Mike pointed out, you know, our former chair really did a good job in a lot of ways and had a particular interest in that DPU investigation. One of the things I learned from him is to really think about the meeting and what's going on and have a lot of questions. So rather than put them in here, I'll do them as part of the board members' closing comments and questions. So another excellent report, another great job by the management team of the business. And are there any questions or comments from Dave or David before we close out the utility director report from anybody on the call?
I think we're all set. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Well, you can't answer for everybody else. This is a democracy.
I'm looking at the faces. I was reading the faces.
Okay.
I don't know where you think this is a democracy with those guys. Between you and I, it's a democracy. With the rest of them, I'm not so sure.
Well, hearing or seeing none, we'll close at item number 7 and go to item 7A that I pencil in every month. And could I ask Stephanie to add it to the agenda going forward, which is to revisit, have any public comments come in during the meeting? Clint Allen?
No comments at this time.
No comment. Okay, thank you, Clint. We'll close that one and move on to board members' closing comments and correspondence. Okay, Mike Landers?
No, I just, I think that as we hopefully sort of turn the corner on what's been a very bad year in so many fronts, it's really impressive the job that we've done. Not we really, you've done, and everybody within the Electric Light Division has done in maintaining what could have been a really awful, well, fiscal and otherwise year, and turned it into what has been, as again, the words of the day, liquid and profitable, which is really saying something. So, I hearken back to our former chair. I do believe that of all years, if there is a time that we need to find some way to thank and congratulate the men and women that work in this department, this is the year we need to do it in one way, shape, or form. And hopefully we can work something out over the course of the next couple months that really does indicate that. So that's number one. And then I don't know, Dave, you might be able to, do we have any indication in regards to vaccines with our guys and gals who are out there, on the front lines and through much of this, are we we have some sort of a community-wide plan, and is there any indication as to how those folks that work for us are going to be vaccinated? Are they going to be able to do it through the town conceivably, or are they going to have to do it independently through their own medical? I'm sure not very few of our employees qualify beyond the idea that they would be, potentially frontline workers, but.
So it's going to be a two-pronged approach where we're going to have some organized guidance that we can give to our employees. Say, here, sign up here for a test, which we organize it, and they can go through either their medical provider or just go right online and do their own appointment for a COVID vaccine. So as you know, we heard from the governor yesterday that they are going at the beginning of February. They're going to start with the second tier, which the utility industry is in, that second tier. So we're right behind. We have the elderly part of the population, the 75 and over and the 65 and over with other factors. They're going to be first. And I believe those two groups are going to be able to start setting up appointments tomorrow, which would then be appointments for the beginning of February. Our group will come right after that. We're essentially with the teachers and the other transport workers and such. We'll be providing a lot of information out to our employees about where you can go and really encouraging that. In the town, it went well with police and fire. The town assisted police and fire to get their vaccines. It seems like it went seamlessly.
Great, good. That's good. That's good news, because I really think it's critical that we do everything in our power to support, and in this case, I speak for all our public employees, that we're able to get them vaccinated as quickly and as effectively as possible. My last thing, and just although it has really nothing to do with the with the Electric Light Division necessarily, but I would be remiss to not put on the record the tremendous loss that the town felt with the passing of retired police chief Pat Ambrose, and I think if possible, if we could send something from our board to the Ambrose family, offering our deepest and sincerest condolences. Those are two departments that work together very, very closely. Obviously, the electric light and the police and the fire are always together dealing with so many issues. So I think it would be a nice gesture on our part to do that. But other than that, I am good. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you, Mike. David, always here's the tough part where I try to emulate Stan, and I have a lot of questions. First one that you hadn't already covered. Last month, we took 2 actions in regards to the charges to ratepayers. We lowered the PP&FA, which is the purchase power cost, and we added a customer charge for all customers. The net result being, of course, that some customers' bills will go up and other customers' bills will go down. We had talked about doing some publicity on that, trying to get a how to read the bill tutorial on the website. I did check the website yesterday. I haven't seen anything on either of those subjects, and I reviewed my electric bill, which is for December usage, so it does not show the added charge, the new charge. So the question is, where are we on publicity for that? It's both a good news, bad news story. And my comments earlier to Clint about the power of those graphs, charts that he has showing where the rates are and have been, and even with the increase, we're still below where we've been historically. It is a good news, bad news story, and I do think we need to not surprise people with that.
So I have a good news, bad news answer. The bad news is I didn't have it ready to go out in the packets to you folks. However, Clint and his staff and Peter and I have had input. Clint has developed a press release memo. I have a draft here in the office. Peter and I are doing one more review of it, and we expect it within the next 2 or 3 days to be sending it out to the board, the town manager, selectmen. Will be getting that information out. So it's imminent. I just couldn't get it for you guys in your packet. I apologize.
That's fine. I just was looking for an update. When do we anticipate it going out in relation to when the bills will go out? When do bills go out with showing these new charges?
The bills have already gone out.
Yeah, the bills have already gone out. So we're going to try to get some information out next week.
Okay. Yeah, because I haven't seen the new bill, but the last one didn't have it. So.
Mr. Chairman, Peter Kapusik here. That is effective January 1st, 2021. The $7 charge for the residential customer. That is a prorated charge, so it wouldn't show up, as a full the full $7 until the next month. But it will start showing up in this month because the read dates go between December and in January, so it's there.
Okay. Well, I think then we should be making every effort to get that out so people are not surprised and angry. They're going to be angry to some extent, but at least we can try to keep them from being surprised. Okay, thank you. Next question. As part of that was, are we going to put on how to read the bill, some kind of tutorial on our website, or is that going to be mentioned in the press release?
Yeah, Bill, I just made a note, and it is included in the press release. I'm going to talk to to Peter and Angelica about how to put that on the bill best or on the website, and we're gonna talk about that a little further, because we have not talked about what we're gonna put on the website about how to read the bill, but I think it's a good idea to put something.
Okay. When I was working, I always tried to get people to differentiate between communicating and putting something on a website, because not everybody goes to websites, not everybody has access to websites. So we need to do both, and I'm glad to hear that you're doing both. Thank you. Okay, next comment is, boy, am I with Mike on, we need to do something for employee appreciation in this extremely difficult year. And I know we always think of that in terms of the hands-on people. But, maybe this year we ought to think about, is there something you guys do for yourselves as a team? Because as Mike has emphasized, it's been a really tough year, and you guys have led this business through amazing challenges, and you're both liquid and profitable. So I agree, it has been a great job done by the team this year. Okay, and my congratulations to you. Next one is a couple of org chart questions. I had asked that an org chart be included in the package, and thank you, Stephanie, for including that. I noted a couple of questions came up as I was going through it. There were 4 openings on there, and in the 3 years I've been on the board, that's the most I've ever seen at one time. Is there any concern about that? Is there something going on that you guys feel concerned about? Just kind of a question that, wow, I hadn't seen that before. So
I guess the reason, well, for 4, it mostly is the recruitment process has been slowed down a little bit, Bill. Number 1, because of the changes to the Director of Engineering Operations position. So we had to be patient and let the town manager work through those changes. Took a while. And granted, we're beating down his doors. We'd like to get it done yesterday. But so it's about those changes. The other thing, in addition to those 4, we also have a vacancy in the business division. The town manager is being very cautious and selective about replacing every position in the town due to the COVID. What's that going to do to budget? What's it going to do to revenues? So the town manager is really, I'd say, taking his time with the replacement of all positions in town, which has slowed down this recruitment and let them stacked up a little bit. So we're just pleased that we have, right now, it looks like we have the green light on all these 4. We're still working on the business office one. We do not have the green light on that one. So we're pushing that one along.
okay, thank you. And then we had been advised a meeting or 2 ago about a couple of our, I think, line workers were completing their 4-year, essentially apprentice type program. Are we planning to do anything special for them, or have we done something special for them to mark that completion?
So they've been recognized 2 ways. They were recognized at NEPA through the coursework when they finished their coursework up there, and then they'll be acknowledged through the annual program that the town manager does, where he announces every promotion in town and does that. So they'll be part of that program.
Good. Just kind of a general question. We have 2 open entry-level positions, a first-class technician in the tech services side of the operation, and then a first-class line worker. Are those the type of training programs that we just talked about with the other 2 guys? Whoever we hire there, unless we hire somebody who's already been through those from another utility, will they enter that kind of program or go through the training?
So on the line worker side, we advertise and always try to find a first-class line worker, or at least a second-class line worker. That would be our preferred option. If we can't find one of those, or we see a candidate that's a lower level training that looks like a real good candidate, we would hire that and bring that up. So it's a decision. We'd love to find the perfect first class, lock them in, we can get ready to go. However, if we can't find that, then the next best thing is to put someone in our apprentice program and bring them up through. It does take 2 to 3 years to come up through, just to get to a second class line worker. So it's a long wait where we have limited, the staff is limited on what they can do. So we have to balance that.
Okay.
So on the technician side, many times on the technician side, we don't find someone fully qualified for that also. If there's someone's fully qualified, we love to grab them, bring them right in. However, we have had to, when we advertise, bring someone in that doesn't have all the qualifications and put them in a training program to work up through. Depends on what we find.
Yeah, is there a similar training program through NEPA, or is that something we have homegrown?
So on the Techna services, it's less less than what we have in the line work. Line worker, NEPA has a standard program. It's very standard, just depending on different voltages. But on the tech services, you need more engineering, more electrical type training. A little different. Some of it's offered through NEPA. Others is offered through other coursework. So it's a mixed bag on that one.
Okay, thank you. And then could I request that we next month go over the business division organization chart?
Sure.
Okay, because I have no idea how big the business division is, and you mentioned an open position. It just kind of naturally follows. Teach the board about that. And
I will do that.
Any residents who are on the call
Right.
or watching on TV. Okay.
Smaller than what we need it to be, but
What's that?
it's smaller than what we need it to be.
Yeah. Okay, I understand that. Okay. Next question, and this one is the one I sent an advance email to you on the recent cost of service study. And I just wanted to ask for questions which may or may not be answered today. I'm perfectly happy with saying, hey, we'd like to think about them next month, or answer now, whichever works for you guys. As a result of the cost of service study, we made changes to the rates and introduced a new customer charge. So the question has occurred to me, do we have a policy on how we set rates? So that's question one. And the next question would be, if we don't, should there be one? And should we add that into the project list to write a rate setting policy so that we as board members and you folks as the leaders of the business have documented what the process should be? I feel like it's pretty disciplined with you guys making, providing a range of options and then making a recommendation. It sounds like it strikes me as a very solid, repeatable process, but those things can change over time. They can deteriorate kind of over the time, and people don't notice. If you have a policy, it kind of underpins it. So that's the first two questions.
So the answer to that question, Bill, you want me to give you the answer before you go on, or do you want me to?
Sure.
So the answer to that is that we have financial accounts and financial reports that are behind what our decisions are about the rates. What we are recommending the board to do is to codify that process on what we have for balances in our reserves, what we have for balances in our rate stabilization fund, where we want to set those balances. So we have a draft policy we'll be presenting to the board likely at the next meeting on how to codify the policies on those accounts and the policies on our financial package as far as how we use that to set rates. We set rates in order to maintain minimum reserves. And so we'll have a presentation for you on how to codify that process.
Okay, great, thank you. A couple of questions then on the actual recommendations or questions that have come up in my mind as a result of the cost of service study. In the study, it was noticed there's, in many of our rates, a discrepancy between the cost of servicing a rate category, that body of customers, and the revenue that is generated by the rate in that category. And the question would be, should we attempt to better relate the rates we charge to the cost of service for that rate. And then a specific one, the single biggest difference was the town, where it had a relatively large percentage-wise deficit. And so it came in mind, and we've recently had discussions around the pilot payment in lieu of taxes to the town. And we were reminded that the town owns Danvers Electric. So in my mind, between those two pieces of information comes up the question of, should we be attempting to relate the cost of service to the town with rates that allow us to recoup those costs, or where they are the owners of the Danvers Electric business, should we be charging them at all? That's just a cost of our doing business with our business owner. So that's one of those that could go either way in my mind. And so again, those, if you want to make an answer now, great. If you want to say, well, let's think about that and answer next month, that's fine too. What do you think?
Yeah, our basic underlying strategy is to have our rates match what the cost of service is. That's pretty simple how we like to keep it. We do have some that are out of whack, I should say, a pretty vague term, but it's right now. We have had initial discussions with the town manager on those. We have not done a fully investigative study on it, so answers or more discussion on those are coming. So obviously we did not have time for the FY22 budget to get those things straightened out. So, but that's on our list. Once we get these minimum cash reserve policy established, that's next on our list to look into these other rate classes.
Okay, and I would agree that there's certainly time to think about that and then decide, for the town to say, okay, and business leadership to say, okay, do we want to tackle these imbalances at all? And then if so, do we also include in that the imbalance with the town, or eliminate the one, just eliminate charging the town? To me, is an option. And no urgency on it other than, we're going to try to keep this rate set for the year, so in time for next year's rate setting, or at least semi-annually or annually. So there is time to think about that, and, for even the town to come up with what do we think is the approach is appropriate.
Yep.
Okay, thank you. That takes care of that one. Kind of, in a way, back to the subject of employee appreciation, what I mentioned at the beginning of the meeting about transparency and accountability and visibility of what we do. At times in the past where I've been, we've tried having an employee every month, every other month, attend a board meeting. With a couple of purposes. One is it allows employees, kind of representatives, if you will, whether they're employee of the month or kind of thing, to attend a board meeting and see what goes on at the board level. Because most people, in my experience, aren't aware of it. They don't know what the board does. It sometimes are almost invisible or magical. Would it make sense to have, for example, an engineer, a line worker, or somebody from the finance operation attend, even remotely now, a board meeting just to see what goes on? They would do it obviously on their work time, and with the goal of just getting folks to understand better, what is it the board's looking at? What do they do? How do they, how do they look out for us? How do we relate to them? Kind of question. And then we've even toyed at times with having an employee who is doing that make a short presentation to the board and the business leadership team with the idea of further educating the board on what's it like working for Danvers Electric and what kind of responsibilities they do. We tend to, as a board, do higher level looks and are not so much down in the weeds, and it might be useful and educational for the board to do. So that's just, again, a suggestion. you guys think about it. Don't need an answer. Just another way for our employees, I think, to feel appreciated and important.
So on the employee appreciation bill, I have made a note of that, and I'll get our staff team together, and we're gonna brainstorm about the employee appreciation. These guys, Clint, Jason, they're better at employee appreciation than I am, so we'll, and Stephanie, of course, so we're gonna get together as a team and kind of brainstorm that idea.
Okay. Question for Stephanie. On the MLB minutes, when do you type them up? I know I find that reviewing them a month later, that I don't always remember exactly everything that happened. If you type them up fairly quickly after the board meeting, no? Okay, all right. Because I was thinking if they were typed up fairly quickly after the board meeting, could you just email them to us? Because I've occasionally had a suggestion or two to change it, doing it at the last minute like that. I know causes a little bit of stress for you, so I thought if you did them early, you could email them to us. We wouldn't have to make any trips, and then you could get any comments or changes before they went out in the finished form. So, okay, just a question. Okay, you mentioned a couple of policies, David. There were a few that were in process as a result of the efficiency audit. Because maybe next month we'll do a general, just how are the policies that were suggested in that? How are they coming? Which ones are being worked? Which ones are deferred to the future? So,
Yeah, the PPFA and the minimum cash reserves, those were the two priority ones that were identified on that. But next month I can give an update on which ones are coming next.
Okay.
We have another policy that Clint and Jason are working on. They're working on standardizing our fees that we charge when we do contracted work. That's another really important one that we're trying to work on, and we want to modernize that and kind of make the engineers' life easier. So that's the third big one that we're working on.
Okay, thanks. Okay. In preparing for the meeting, I went back through the cost of service study, and I came up with a whole bunch of questions, which I don't want to take time in the meeting here. Is it possible I could do that offline with a WebEx or Zoom meeting? And who would I do that with?
With me, Bill.
With you, David? Okay. Could we set something up? I'm pretty flexible other than this week, Tuesday, Wednesday, tomorrow and Thursday, but Friday or next week would be fine.
Yeah, so on next week on how does Tuesday morning work, Bill?
Tuesday morning works fine, David.
Okay, and Peter, are you available Tuesday morning if I include you in that? He is coming and going on us over there.
Yeah, disappearing Peter.
So right now we'll plan on.
I don't see anything on our calendar for Tuesday.
Okay, good. So we'll plan on 10:30 next Tuesday.
Okay. And send me a WebEx on that?
Yeah, either a WebEx or a Zoom, one of the two. Yeah, we'll give you the link.
Okay.
I should talk to the board. So the town is migrating away from the WebEx platform. We were kind of surprised when it came out at first. So I believe it for the next municipal light board meeting will probably be in the Microsoft Teams format. It works very similar to this. However, I am working with IT. The town is changing the public involvement. Instead of if someone in advance wanted to come and speak to an event, we could send a certain invitation to get to allow the public to come in and talk to to a topic on the agenda. So we're working with that to take the public participation to the next level beyond what we have right now.
Okay, yeah, whatever. I've done Zoom with the family, so I'm familiar with Zoom.
Good.
Works fine. Whatever works for you guys, and 10:30 next Tuesday, the 2nd is fine.
Great.
Thank you. Okay, all right. One thing that occurred to me going back through the cost of service study was, we did that efficiency audit, probably a year or two ago now. And then we, of course, hired consultants to do the cost of service study. And a number of initiatives were undertaken as a result of the efficiency audit. And of course, we've taken rate action as a result of the cost of service study. I thought sometimes when I used to work, we would go back later and do kind of an autopsy or a debrief on, okay, we did a major effort, which the efficiency audit was, and the cost of service study was. We spent a significant amount of money. Let's go back and look at them and see what was our purpose or our goals in doing that. How have things changed since then? And did we get the benefits we want? And are we glad we did it? So I was wondering, could we take a look at the efficiency audit, a year, whatever it is, afterwards, and see, wow, we've really made a lot of changes, and I think we have, and say, did we get what we wanted out of that? And is it, it's the kind of thing I think my opinion is that was quite good for our business. And then we've since done the cost of service study, and I think that was quite informative. So I think these are positive steps you guys have taken as a team. And I'd just like to look back at them and say, yep, those are good. Are there similar things we should be doing? So could I ask that, at some point, whether it's next month or later, we take a look back at the efficiency of it?
So how we're going to do that, Bill, is we know that the next item that was on the list from the efficiency audit was the financial management software package.
Mm-hmm.
And the 3 or 4 things under that, there's 4 buckets under that's going to take care of. We know we've got to get that project going. What I will tell you is Nets, and with all COVID and everything, we're trying to work to get that off the ground. And that's the challenge of our workload right now, is to get that going. That and the meter replacement. Those are our challenges. We don't feel like those projects are moving along like we would like them, like we want them to be. As we as a team figure out a way to get the financial management software, get that process going, which is a big undertaking. Once we get the balls rolling, at that time we'll take a look back to make sure we're hitting the goals of the efficiency audit when we get out there with our RFP or what we're doing on that. We're meeting with vendors, and then we'll report on that to the board that we've got this going, and we've looked back at the efficiency to see how we've hit those marks with this once we get it going. First, we got to get a plan how we can get this off the ground and get the wheels rolling, and then we can take a look back and make sure we're hitting the mark. Does that make sense?
It does. Thank you. Okay. Next question. When I first joined the board 3 years ago now, this month, the meetings then were the second Tuesday of every month. And it kind of made it easier, in my mind, to plan other things. Because I always knew if I was looking out 5 or 6 months, I knew, the second Tuesday I'm busy. I don't want to put anything on there. Within that, my first year on the board, that kind of evolved into every month we set it for the next month. And as a result, it's moving around, and it does not appear on the town's regular calendar of meetings until it gets scheduled. Where if you look at the town calendar meetings for the year, most of the fixed boards and committees and stuff, their meetings are on there. Ours are not, because ours is mobile. Should we consider going back to having a fixed time for the meeting, just to simplify planning purposes? again, that's not one that needs to be answered now. Just, take a look at it. It works fine doing it month to month, but I thought there were advantages to having it fixed. So that I've expressed my opinion. I'm happy with that. Let's see, okay. I was hoping Eric would be at this meeting. I'm getting close to the end, so hold your breath. The light board chair position. When I came on, Stan was the chair, and he was the chair until he unfortunately passed away. I'm one who thinks that sometimes it's good to keep a person in that role. They have gained experience, and I personally feel like I'm kind of just now starting to get comfortable with it. But I'm aware that the Board of Selectmen, for example, chooses a new chairman each year. And I'm wondering if we should consider doing that with this role. I think that I had thought about doing it, putting on the agenda, well, let's have a discussion of it in February, which is when I assumed this role. But I was assuming Eric would be able to make today's meeting, and unfortunately, work emergency prevented that. I just wanted to open the discussion, and Mike, what do you think about that?
I've been on a lot of boards in town, and there are definitely boards. For example, the Finance Committee, which I'm on currently, has traditionally been a board in which the chairperson has served, in some cases, what seems like an unlimited period of time. I remember back in the days when Mike Tybert was the chair of the Finance Committee, and it seemed like he was there for about a dozen years. That board does not reorganize itself on a yearly basis. Obviously, the Select Board does. It's on the Recreation Committee. The Recreation Committee does reorganize itself on a yearly basis. Planning Board, I was chair of the Planning Board at one point, and I think that did reorganize on a yearly basis. However, I do recall in past the Board of Appeals, for example. I guess what I'm saying is it's all over the place. This is a board for any number of reasons that I think there is a good argument for keeping the chair consistent. And I'm not saying that so that I can avoid being the chair, but it has some value to keeping that consistency for as long as that individual is, able and capable to do the job, which clearly you are, and you've done a great job in the year that you've been doing this. So, if you were to ask me, for both selfish and more, I've been at as young as I look, I've been at this for a long time, and I just think that this is a board that it lends itself well to having the same chair consistently, as long as that person wants to do it. So as long as you want to do it, I have absolutely no problem supporting you to be chair for the next 30 years if that works out.
Well, I wasn't fishing for compliments, but thank you, Mike. I think what I'd like to do is have the discussion again when Eric attends, when we have a full board at the meeting. I just think it's healthy to at least consider it. Because, you mentioned this a dozen years. It as we see with the state legislature, it can grow to be a problem. And if there isn't a term limit or something, that constitutes a reason for that reorganization, it can develop problems. And I don't want to be a part of developing that problem. So.
No, I don't disagree with you on that. And certainly, again, as people who were around at that time, and the Finance Committee was Mike Tybert to a certain extent, just as, quite frankly, the Board of Selectmen was Baron Mayer. But and I think in this board there's been enough, and traditionally there's been quite a bit of mobility on the part of members. It tends not to be a board in which people have been there for 10, 12, 15 years. And I would anticipate that that could always be the case going forward. So from that standpoint, you know, having, while you can, a consistent leadership position provides that consistency that I think is important. So from that standpoint, I'm not so sure that next year is the year to make that change. But again, I'm one member. And again, I'm being somewhat selfish with my comments.
Sure.
So I do think that there's a little value in at least for the next year, allowing you to stay on. We'll keep a close eye on you, and if things start to run afoul, we can make a change. But you know,
Okay,
that's my thought.
all right, thank you. Finally, I'm at the end of my comments. The last one, and these would be the closing remarks from the chair. And I'd just like to focus on two words: change and turnover. In some respects, to going to Mike's comment about continuity, I kind of feel like an old curmudgeon in terms of age. You know, I'm only 3 years on this board. I got all of you beat by a lot on age. So I'd like to deliver a few old cudgermanly thoughts. The world is constantly changing, and we've seen that this year. Danvers Electric has been constantly changing. We've seen people go, a couple of the members of the leadership team over the last year, and a couple of our board members. And when new people come in, they bring new challenges, they bring new tools, they bring new ideas and solutions, and that's a good thing. But sometimes when you have new people, you forget, we lose focus on old effective tools in people and tasks. And I think this board and the leadership team has dealt well with the changes. When I joined the board, I brought a large business, manufacturing and engineering background. Both of the other board members had strong electrical backgrounds as craftsmen. Now we have me with my large manufacturing and engineering background, Mike with his legal background, and Eric with his nonprofit executive background. So it's a very different board, but I think both have been strong. And the leadership team has changed a lot in the time I've been on the board and dealt with a lot, particularly over this last year. So it's kind of like, wow, I've seen a strong business stay strong through very challenging times in turnover and new challenges, and it's been good. So that wraps up the old curmudgeon comments. Can we set the next meeting?
So this is the fourth Tuesday. We could go with the fourth Tuesday again, Bill, in February.
Okay. And what would that date be?
The 23rd, I think. 23rd or 24th? 23rd.
23rd, yeah. Let me just look. It works for me. How about you, Mike?
We got nods from Mike.
Oh, he wasn't falling asleep?
No.
Well, no, I was, but I woke up and said, "Oh yeah, the 23rd works great."
He wasn't sleeping, Bill.
Okay. Tuesday, February 23rd, 8:30 a.m. Okay. Well, once again, I'd like to thank everybody. Another great meeting. I think I apologize for going quite so long, but it's way shorter than the last one.
All right.
Thank you all. Keep up the good work, and we'll see you next month.
Stephanie, do you need a motion to adjourn?
Oh, do I hear a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Thank you, Mike. I will second that motion. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing and seeing none other than heads nodding off. Move to a roll call vote. Mike Landers.
Hey.
Bill Hayes. Aye. Motion passes unanimously. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.